currently Earth. It was March 7th in the year 1876 when 29-year-old Alexander Graham Bell received a patent for his revolutionary new invention, the telephone. The Scottish-born Bell worked in London with his father, Melville Bell, who developed Visible Speech, a written system used to teach speaking to the deaf. In the 1870s, Bell moved to Boston, Massachusetts, where the younger Bell found work as a teacher at the Pemberton Avenue School for the Deaf. He later married one of his students, Mabel Hubbard. While in Boston, Bell became very interested in the possibility of transmitting speech over wires. Samuel F.B. Morse's invention of the telegraph in 1843 had made nearly instantaneous communication possible between two distant points. The drawback of the telegraph, however, was that it still required hand delivery of messages between telegraph stations and recipients, and only one message could be transmitted at a time. Bell wanted to improve on this by creating a harmonic telegraph, a device that combined aspects of the telegraph and a record player to allow individuals to speak to each other from a distance. With the help of Thomas A. Watson, a Boston machine shop employee, Bell developed a prototype. In this first telephone, sound waves caused an electric current to vary in intensity and frequency, causing a thin, soft iron plate called the diaphragm to vibrate. These vibrations were transferred magnetically to another wire connected to a diaphragm and another distant instrument. When that diaphragm vibrated, the original sound would be replicated in the ear of the receiving instrument. 3 days after filing the patent, the telephone carried its first intelligible message, the famous, quote, "Mr. Watson, come here, I need you," unquote, from Bell to his assistant. It was March 7th in the year 1965 in Selma, Alabama, that a 600-person civil rights demonstration ends in violence when marchers are attacked and beaten by white state troopers and sheriff deputies. The day's events became known as Bloody Sunday. The demonstrators, led by civil rights activist John Lewis of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and Jose Williams of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, were commemorating the recent fatal shooting of Jimmy Lee Jackson, a 26-year-old church deacon, by State Trooper James Bonnard Fowler. The group planned to march the 54 miles from Selma to Montgomery, the state capital. Just as they crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge outside Selma, they were ordered to disperse. Moments later, police assaulted them with tear gas, bullwhips, and billy clubs. Lewis, then 25, was one of the 17 marchers hospitalized. Dozens more were treated for injuries. The violence was broadcast on TV and recounted in newspapers, spurring demonstrations in 80 cities across the nation within days. On March 9th, Martin Luther King Jr. led more than 2,000 marchers to the Edmund Pettus Bridge. On March 15th, our nation's 36th president, Lyndon B. Johnson, spoke on the need for voting reform, something activists in Selma had long been fighting for. Quote, "There is no issue of states' right or national rights. There is only the struggle for human rights. We have already waited 100 years and more, and the time for waiting is gone," unquote. Martin Luther King Jr. completed the March on Montgomery along with 25,000 demonstrators on March 25th under the protection of the U.S. military and the FBI. The route is now a U.S. National Historic Trail. Prodded by what Johnson called the outrage of Selma, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was signed into law 5 months later with the purpose to right that wrong. John Lewis became a U.S. Congressman from Georgia in 1986. He continued his eternity in the year 2020. It was March 7th in the year 2010 that Kathryn Bigelow became the first woman to win an Academy Award for Best Director for her movie, The Hurt Locker, about an American bomb squad that disabled explosives in Iraq in 2004. Prior to Bigelow, only 3 women had been nominated for a Best Director Oscar. Lena Wertmuller for 1975's Seven Beauties, Jane Campion for 1993's The Piano, and Sofia Coppola for 2003's Lost in Translation. Born in San Carlos, California in 1951, Bigelow graduated from the San Francisco Art Institute in 1972 and later earned a master's degree in film from Columbia University. She made her feature film debut with 1982's The Loveless, in which she co-wrote and co-directed. The film about a motorcycle gang starred Willem Dafoe. The next movie Bigelow directed is 1987's Near Dark, which was a Western horror hybrid that gained a cult following. She went on to helm 1990's Blue Steel, starring Jamie Lee Curtis as a police officer stalked by a killer, and 1991's Point Break, about bank robbing surfers featuring Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves. Bigelow's other directing credits include 1995's Strange Days, 2000's The Weight of Water, 2002's K-19, The Widowmaker, 2012's Zero Dark 30, and 2017's Detroit. At the 82nd Academy Awards in March of 2010, Bigelow's fellow Best Director nominees included James Cameron for Avatar, whom she was married to from 1989 to 1991, along with Lee Daniels for Precious, Jason Reitman for Up in the Air, and Quentin Tarantino for Inglourious Basterds. After making history by winning the directing prize, Bigelow said, and quote, "I hope I'm the first of many women, and of course I love to just think of myself as a filmmaker, and I long for the day when that modifier can be a moot point," unquote. Her movie The Hurt Locker, which starred Jeremy Renner, Anthony Mackie, and Brian Garrity, also won Oscars for Best Picture, Film Editing, Sound Mixing, and Original Screenplay. The information documented on this audio file can be verified on